Okay, that's our signal to get rolling. Welcome, everyone. It is Civic Saturday in Nebraska. My name is Steve Smith, and I'm the Director of Communications, and we're here at Civic, Nebraska.
Yes, we are. I'm Kathy Steinauer Smith, and we're coming to you on March 27th from Lincoln. We are very much looking forward to our gathering today. Civic Saturday is a chance to gather with friends and strangers and think about what it means to live up to the American ideal in today's world. How do we restore a sense of common destiny in America? These are difficult questions, but we think that Civic Saturday provides a really good forum for us to challenge us to rehumanize our politics and rekindle our spirit of love in civic life.
This is Civic Nebraska's 5th Civic Saturday gathering. They date back to about December of 2019. We've explored some big topics in that time, and for those of you who have been with us, you know some of these. We've looked at the collective good, about having better arguments, finding civic power. Today, we're going to focus on patriotism. That simple concept is, as we'll see, not so simple. And for those of you who are new to Civic Saturday, here's what to expect. There's going to be a lot of reflection, both individually and as a group. We'll do that through song, and we'll do it through poetry. We'll do it through a series of readings that we like to call civic scriptures. I'll share some thoughts on our theme shortly. And throughout, we hope you'll turn to the chat and just add your thoughts to the discussion. That's an important part. The discourse in the chat is an important part of Civic Saturday. So please, if you feel comfortable stepping into space, please do.
And we will also offer a wider chance to participate at the end, which is the end of our formal discussion. We will divide into breakout rooms for small group discussion, which we call civic circles. We'll be sure to prompt your civic circles with a reflection question. And this is always everybody's favorite part of Civic Saturday, because it's a chance to be heard, it's a chance to interact and engage. And of course, you're always welcome to sit back and bear witness, whatever works best for you. So stick around, there will be much more to come.
Does it bother you that was what people always say is the best part of Civic Saturday? I don't take it personally.
No.
No, it's great.
We've got a lot of good pieces today. So we'll see if today that holds up.
There's no survey at the end, folks.
Yeah.
So let's get started. It is my pleasure to introduce our poet today, Matt Mason. 2 years ago, Matt was named Nebraska's state poet. He writes about a range of things. Anyone who's followed him knows this. He writes about fatherhood, relationships, religion, life in the Midwest, and Great Plains. Matt has also operated the Poetry Menu, a clearinghouse of all things Nebraska poetry, and he's the executive director of the Nebraska Writers Collective. Our state poet comes to us today from his home in Omaha. Hi, Matt.
Good morning. Hello, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here. There's a lot of names I know, faces I know because of poetry. So going out to McCook and all over the state. So it's great to see you all here. This poem is a poem called Studying the Capitol. We've been walking from cemetery to monument, great granite head to emblematic architecture. These history book photos that we find have side streets and gift shops. Humidity splotches on my t-shirt, maps stay folded in our backpacks, as who needs them? Everywhere's a museum. From the great marble edifices to the sidewalks, button bronze with names and stories. Library, church, marketplace, tower, reflecting pool grass, iron fence, fountain. No real destination, just a country to see. No rush. We'll take our time.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Matt. That anyone who's been to our nation's capital and experienced the humidity and the history knows that feeling. Such a powerful place to be, whether your first visit when you're a kid or when you go as an adult. Thank you for sharing your words, Matt. We are excited to introduce our musician today. Our musician is Ariel Meriville. Ariel's day job is Associate Minister of Music at First Plymouth Church in Lincoln. He came to Nebraska from Atlanta, where he was active in the music community, just as he is here. And anyone who has heard Ariel perform knows he is a passionate and gifted musician, and that he enjoys leading others in diverse and meaningful expressions of music. Ariel, we are so honored to have you today with us for Civic Saturday.
Thank you so much, Steve and Kathy, and everyone's here. It's so good to be with you today. The first song I will sing for you is Sam Cooke's "A Change Is Gonna Come." And as many of you know, that song is rooted in the civil rights movement. And I think the shared struggle that movement represents is one that all Americans can relate to. So I hope you enjoy. I was born by the river in a little tent, and oh, just like the river, I've been running ever since, for it's been a long time coming, and I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die, 'cause I don't know what's up there beyond the sky, for it's been a long time coming, and I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. I go to the movie, and I go downtown. Somebody keep telling me, don't hang around, for it's been a long time coming, and I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. Then I go to my brother, and I say, brother, help me please. But he winds up knocking me back down on my knees. Oh, there've been times that I thought I couldn't last for long, and now I think I'm able to carry on, for it's been a long time coming, and I know a change gonna come. Yes, it's been a long time coming, and I know a change is gonna come. Oh yes it will.
was incredible. That was incredible. Thank you so much, Ariel. A song of hope and vigilance from the great Sam Cooke. Thank you. You know, if we were meeting in person, this would be the point where we would ask everyone to turn to one another. Hi.
Hi.
And do something we call a turn and talk. In our virtual space, feel free to use the chat to offer any thoughts you might have on this question. What values do we need to rediscover in America in 2021? Laura's going to put it in the chat for you just in case. We'd love to see your answers. We're not going to read them. There's no deadline or requirement on these. It's just something to think about, and if you want to step into space and contribute to the discourse, if you'd like. That's our turn and talk. What values do we need to rediscover in America in 2021? Thanks.
We look forward to the day we will be able to have an actual turn and talk.
Later this year.
We're very eager. Our first piece of civic scripture today will be read by our friend, Astrid Munn. Steve and I have known Astrid for many years, back to some time at the local newspaper working together. She's now the child and family managing attorney at Immigrant Legal Center in Omaha. She is a native of Scottsbluff, and we understand she's actually back home there this morning, back in the Mountain Time Zone. Thanks for joining us an hour earlier. Astrid is also a member of the Civic Nebraska Writers Group, and you can and you should go read her work at civicnebraska.org. Good morning, Astrid.
Good morning, Steve and Kathy, and good morning, everyone. I'm so happy to be joining you today from Scottsbluff. The reading today, the first reading, is excerpted from a speech on the floor of the House of Representatives on September 14th, 2001, just 3 days after one of the worst terrorist attacks on the United States. Emotions were, understandably, running very high. Congress was hastily considering a resolution that would grant the president the authority to take any and all means necessary to prevent further attacks. On the day this speech was given, the Senate passed the resolution 98-0, and it eventually passed the House 420-1. That one was Representative Barbara Lee of California. Lee stood in the House chamber and, with conviction, explained why she could not bring herself to vote yes. She did this, knowing full well her love of country would be questioned, and worse. Here are the words of Representative Barbara Lee. I know that this resolution will pass, although we all know that the president can wage war even without it. However difficult this vote may be, some of us must urge the use of restraint. There must be some of us who say, let's step back for a moment and think through the implications of our actions today. Let us more fully understand their consequences. We must be careful not to embark on an open-ended war with neither an exit strategy nor a focused target. We cannot repeat past mistakes. In 1964, Congress gave President Johnson the power to take all necessary measures to prevent further aggression. In so doing, this House abandoned its own constitutional responsibilities and launched our country into years of undeclared war in Vietnam. Senator Wayne Morse, one of the 2 lonely votes against the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, declared, quote, "History will record that we have made a grave mistake in subverting and circumventing the Constitution of the United States." I believe that with the next century, future generations will look with dismay and great disappointment upon a Congress which is now about to make such a historic mistake. Senator Morse was correct, and I fear we make the same mistake today. And I fear the consequences. I have agonized over this vote, but I came to grips with it in the very painful yet beautiful memorial service today at the National Cathedral. As the member of the clergy so eloquently said, as we act, let us not become the evil we deplore.
Barbara Lee. Thanks, Astrid. Those words initially were met with scorn and disgust amid a wave of patriotic fervor probably not seen since World War II, I would guess. But with each passing year, they become more and more profound, those words. And as the saying from the 60s goes, dissent is the highest form of patriotism.
Indeed. Thank you, Astrid. Our second piece of civic scripture is from the late Senator John McCain of Arizona. At the time he wrote these words, Senator McCain had just become the presumptive Republican nominee for president in 2008. A Vietnam veteran, McCain was shot down over Hanoi in 1967 and spent the next 6 years as a prisoner of the Viet Cong. He often cited this experience as a galvanizing force in his lifelong service to America and in his love of country. This is Senator McCain's A Cause Greater Than Self from June 25th, 2008. The patriot must not just accept, but in his or her own way, protect the ideals that gave birth to our country, to stand against injustice and for the rights of all, and not just one's own interests. The patriot honors the duties, the loyalties, the inspirations, and the habits of mind that bind us together as Americans. We are the heirs and caretakers of freedom, a blessing preserved with the blood of heroes down through the ages. Love of country is another way of saying love of your fellow countrymen, a truth I learned a long time ago in a country very different from ours. Patriotism is another way of saying service to a cause greater than self-interest. If you find faults with our country, make it a better one. If you are disappointed with the mistakes of government, join its ranks and work to correct them. I hope more Americans would consider enlisting in our armed forces. I hope more would consider running for public office or working in federal, state, or local governments. But there are many public causes where your service can make our country a stronger, better one than we inherited. The good citizen and patriot knows happiness is greater than comfort, more sublime than pleasure. The cynical and indifferent know not what they miss. For their mistake is an impediment not only to our progress as a civilization, but to their happiness as individuals.
John McCain, kind of missed the guy. Thank you to our readers, Astrid and Kathy. Those were two North and South poles of American patriotism, and both important contours of American patriotism. So this is the part where I get to talk. As I always say, this is my favorite part. It might not be yours, it's mine. So do me a favor when we get started here. Close your eyes for a second and keep them closed until I prompt you to open them again, okay? I want you to do something for me. Picture a patriot. Picture a patriot. What comes to you? Maybe your mind's eye sees those who fought for the cause of liberty. A militiaman stopping the British at the Old North Bridge. Or maybe it's a Union soldier holding the line at Gettysburg. Or Marines lifting the flag on that rocky Pacific island. Or do you see other varieties of freedom fighters? Conductors on the Underground Railroad. Freedom riders busing along Southern roadways. A preacher with a dream. Keep them closed. Let's go further. Can you see, maybe, a president lifting up a nation during a crisis? Maybe triumphant athletes in red, white, and blue holding medals or World Cups. Motorcyclists flanking the families of fallen soldiers, offering them just a respite as well as a little space to grieve. What about protesters on the public square? A lone voice standing against the drumbeat of war. Or maybe it's very simple, like a neighbor lowering and folding her front porch flag into a neat and crisp triangle as the sun goes down each night. Go ahead and open your eyes. That's an interesting exercise, isn't it? Walking through all those different categories, how our mental lenses shifted and reframed and revolved along with the decades and centuries and contours of patriotism that we visited. And each of those images is, by the way, as valid as the next. Each certainly does convey a distinct aspect of our American patriotism, straightforward and yet complicated, physical and yet abstract, but always, always, always steeped in those American values that we all share and love, values of equality and optimism, toughness and fairness, the things we like to talk about. I think they're telling too in their diversity. Our definitions of American patriotism are wide ranging. And that's really shouldn't be a shock to any of us. It's expected here in the United States. Surveys show that compared with the rest of the world, we spend an awful lot of time thinking about, well, we spend a lot of time arguing about what is patriotic. For example, the World Values Survey. I know you guys just wait for it to come hot off the presses every year. I know you do, just like me. The World Values Survey, it's the most consistent measurement of national sentiments around the world. America always is at the top or near the top when it comes to expressing pride in our nationality. It just is. Fact of life, fact of the world. What might be surprising, though, is that if you look at some other domestic surveys, they show that American pride is actually on the decline. I mean, again, if some surveys are to be believed. Example, in 2003, the annual Gallup survey on this topic found that a full 70%, that's 70, not 17, 70% of us were, quote unquote, extremely proud to be Americans. By 2019, that number in the survey had slid to 47%. That's not even a majority, man. I mean, I can't even imagine that. Less than 1 in 2. So I have lots of amateur theories on why that number is probably dropping. I look at it and I think that most of all, it reflects the really complicated nature of America. It's been a hell of a 2 decades, guys. Our national story is extraordinary and messy. We've not always been the good guy, have we? We've struggled mightily to really live up to those heady founding principles we like to celebrate every July 4th. I get it. Yet, I love my country. I love it. And I know you're here today because you do too. And you have that yearning for and that calling for something greater. So let's talk about patriotism. Let's wrestle with it a little bit. Let's try to wrap our heads around what it means to us, both individually and collectively. And maybe by the time we part ways today, we'll have at least started a conversation about what patriotism means in the United States in the year 2021, Anno Domini. First, let's talk about the patriotism that we often settle for. Second, let's talk about a modern patriotism that is needed. And finally, let's talk a little bit about what patriotism can still be as we go forward. Okay, that first point. I'm sorry, I'm still stuck on that 47% thing. I mean, I suppose it's a safe bet that some of the drop in the past 20 years is in response to how polarized our politics have become, right? Because of the emergence of Team Red and Team Blue, and in an era when not even Mr. Potato Head or Dr. Seuss can escape the smallness of our politics. It's easy to conflate our country with our political leaders. I guess if they're on your side and in the majority, you're proud of your country. If not, then you're not. Is that patriotism? Doesn't seem like it to me. An American who holds their love of country hostage, depending on whether their team is in power or not, is, well, that's a partisan, not a patriot. And partisans use patriotism like a cudgel. They swing it around, they smash dissent with it, all in the service of a particular and narrow ideology. But obedience to a narrow ideology is not the same as love of country. We know that. It's also obvious that a slice of Americans clearly believe one's patriotism can be measured by how much red, white, and blue they display. And there are daily reminders of this, here in the heartland especially. 3x5 flags flapping on the back of pickup trucks going down Highway 2. We had a political candidate drive through our residential neighborhood last fall blaring a Lee Greenwood. Now, to be clear, there's nothing inherently wrong with flags on trucks or liking Lee Greenwood. But if that's where one's love of country starts and stops, if there's little to no purpose behind such performative behavior other than to flex, then it's hard not to see this as simply self-interest. And so it comes off as cheap and it comes off as shallow. This kind of patriotism, not unlike the maneuvers from elected officials in Georgia this week in terms of voting, is not built to stand the test of time. But that said, I do have to give credit where it's due. That empty swagger that I just described is, man, that's really pervasive. In the United States of entertainment, it's become its own brand. And so it can naturally drive otherwise loyal Americans to overcompensate in response, that opposite and equal reaction that can create an unintentional and unproductive dichotomy, refuting the lunkheaded idea that America can do no wrong with the lunkheaded idea that America can do no right. So we're at a time with heavy conflict. I don't need to tell you that, you know this. It's all putting strain on our American heart. And some of us might say, well, good, let's crush that sucker and let's start over. Maybe they're right. Here's the thing. Whatever happens next in our shared American story, patriotism matters. Patriotism matters. It's going to have a big role to play, just as it has throughout our history. So we need to decide what kind of patriotism that's going to be. It can be half-baked, jingoistic, and reactionary. Or it can be something useful, something reflective, something that points to a higher purpose, a national calling that compels us to leave this place better than we found it. So that leads me to the second thing that I want to talk about today, why patriotism is still important at long last. It's more than just having pride. Patriotism is pride with purpose. And it is an indispensable ingredient in American life, no matter who you are, where you come from, how you vote. You've heard me preach on this before, but America, it truly is one of a kind. We Americans deeply believe our nation is built upon a unifying creed that is simultaneously unique and universal. You know what I mean. I mean, we're the first country to successfully, at least, combine oil with water, individual liberty, and collective sacrifice. We blended these things together into a American alchemy that has brought about something never before experienced in the entire history of our world. And it would have failed long ago had it not been for Americans before us understanding that a country doesn't just become great. It's taken a deep understanding of what choices we've made to make our nation great. And more importantly, what choices we all must make to keep us great. Choices that involve common endeavor, shared sacrifice. These everyday acts bring real meaning and mutuality to the words of the founders. Let's put it this way. Our Constitution makes us free persons, but our bonds of civic affection, that makes us a people. So if nothing else sticks today, I hope you can come away with this. Patriotism matters. Because without it, citizenship is just value-free spade work, keeping busy for busy's sake. Patriotism puts meaning behind our citizenship. It strengthens our social bonds. It solidifies our mutuality as Americans. It helps to shape our common purpose. And in case I didn't make it clear, it's absolutely necessary as we move forward. So let's make that turn around the far post and moving forward. The third thing I want to talk about today. I know this can be a hairy topic. It can stir passions, and it can unearth some pretty deeply held convictions that we might not have realized we valued so much until, well, Steve started poking at them. So I'm determined here to not be very prescriptive. I don't want to lay out a lot of hard and fast rules here. That's a fool's errand anyway, given everything we've talked about. The truth is there are many, many, many people who consider themselves patriots. They care about this country, but they just might care about it in a different way than I do. So rather than making endless value judgments, suffice it to say that there's room on the spectrum for most, if not all, of us in this discussion. Here's what I would say. Here in the 21st year of the 21st century, we could benefit from a little more reality-based patriotism. One that really does meet us Americans where we are and where we've been. And based on those realities, one that casts an imaginative hope for the future. And this hope would come from an honest evaluation of our past and our present. So this means this is a love of country that rejects nationalism. And it also sets aside the deception of absolute American exceptionalism. Those, again, are narrow concepts. They're based on myths. At the same time, this reality-based patriotism also has to strengthen our relationship with our American identity, doesn't it? And that relationship can and should include questioning and doubt, but it also can and should cherish the brighter spots of being American. We can and should find something about our country to celebrate. Again, this doesn't mean we don't acknowledge our sins or our flaws and then strive to set things right. But it most certainly means allowing ourselves to be grateful. And yes, like Lee Greenwood says, proud to be Americans. Can't believe I just quoted Lee Greenwood. Here's what stirs my American spirit. The fact that we are a consequential people that make up a consequential nation, a necessary nation. That America is a unique and noble ideal made manifest. It's a righteous declaration of self-evident truths that should pertain to all men, women, and children. There is greatness in this ideal, and it has bent the arc of history. And so I do believe we are a special people with an essential responsibility, not only to one another, but to the entire world. At our best, we stand as examples of the strength of freedom and equality, a fair shot. And for the values and virtues of honesty and hard work and courage and fair play, tolerance, innovation. It's not like we have a monopoly on those things. We don't. But when we apply them here in America, in our free society, when our example of how we treat one another takes hold in a positive way, We send ripples across the globe. We inspire untold billions to reach for that ideal that we actually too often take for granted. I said I wouldn't get too prescriptive, but I would be remiss if I didn't say this. One obvious way to be patriotic right now, to combine your pride with purpose, is to get vaccinated at your first opportunity. Those who have been to the big clinics, like the ones at Pinnacle Bank Arena, they speak unanimously of the pride that's evident at these events. It's bracketed by this spirit of tackling a shared issue together, efficiently, directly, together. What's happening right now is an American miracle. It's worth celebrating as patriots, accepting this gift of science, this gift of innovation, this gift of determination, not only for ourselves, but for our neighbors, for our loved ones, for our fellow Americans. With each Facebook photo showing a Band-Aid on a shoulder, we individually and collectively say to one another, take heart. The end of the pandemic is in sight. And there's nothing we can't overcome if we own it together. Because, and you know this already, it's up to us. It's up to us. This applies to our public health and our civic health. We're in a fraught time in our republic, and we need committed patriots right now. People who are grounded in love of country and well-versed in our long-held national values to help stabilize this American ship. I mean, I don't care if you're left, right, or otherwise. This is so much bigger than politics. It's about our American values, remembering them and acting every day on their behalf. Patriot acts. So as I come to the end of my sermon today, I sincerely hope this is a start for all of us in pondering just what realistic American patriotism looks like in the 2020s. Yeah, it should appear slightly different to each of us. I mean, that's the unum part that balances the pluribus. But no matter where we all fall, this much is clear. Patriotism matters. At its best, it can be aspirational and inspirational, inclusive and exceptional. We can be honest about our glories and our sins. We can reckon with and reflect on our national shared ideals, as well as our very essence as individuals. Our patriotism is an acknowledgement that America is far from perfect, yet she is an important and significant nation. As her people, we must all take on a role in her story, each and every one of us, every day, for our shared national future, for us as a people, and for the rest of the world, frankly. Please indulge me one more time. I'd ask you briefly again to close your eyes again. Picture a patriot. Look closely. Do you see yourself? Thank you.
This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for my holy shrine. But other hearts in other lands are beating with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesty above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for heroes proved in liberating strife, who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life. America, America, God mended thine every flaw, confirm thyself in self-control, thy liberty in the law. Oh, beautiful for patriot dreams that see beyond the years, thine alabaster cities gleamed, undimmed by human tears. America, America, may God thy gold refine, till all success be nobleness, and every gain divine. America, America, may God thy gold refine, till all success be nobleness, and every gain divine.
Woo!
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Ariel. This poem is called Fourth. I loved the fireworks, the boom, the flash, sparkler, snake, smoke bomb, bottle rocket, Roman candles in our hands in ways we were warned against. The day was, for the country or something, was hot dogs and watermelon and a million tiny flags. And okay, the day is a lot symbolic, as freedom didn't get born just on that day. Did you know the votes for independence actually happened July 2nd? Did you know it only mattered if you were white like me, owned a penis, owned property? For most, it was or is the bookmark, not the book, holding a place till 1863 or 65 or 1964, 65, 68, 1870 or 1924, 1920, 1945 or 46 or 88, 2015, or still holding. It's flash, it's bang, it's a promise. These lights in the skies make, with flash, with bang, with promises, with weight, with weight, with weight.
Wow, we have been really honored today to feature and include some exceptional talent, some esteemed performers. Thank you so much, Ariel. Thank you, Matt. We have chills.
That was amazing, guys. We'll be forming our civic circles momentarily, so stick with us. This is the best part. Before we do, just a few quick words of thanks today. Kathy just summed it up really well, but let me add my sincere gratitude to both Matt and Ariel for lending their formidable talents to Civic Saturday today. These performances will stay with us for a long time. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you so much. A special thank you to Astrid Munn for joining us all the way out there in the Panhandle. And thanks too to Laura Uradil, who has been quarterbacking Civic Saturday from behind the scenes. Thank you so much, Laura. Civic Saturday is a production of Civic Nebraska. If you want to know more about how our organization works to defend and strengthen democracy in our state, you can go to civicnebraska.org.
All right, it's time for those civic circles. So here is our question to reflect on and to discuss as we break into smaller groups. Our question today is, how can we make a realistic patriotism more important in America? One more time, how do we make a realistic patriotism more important in America?
We'll see you in there in just a few seconds. Before we do, I want to share 9 simple verbs that we studied very closely during my training as a fellow this year with Citizen University, and they're the originators of Civic Saturday. These verbs are a pillar of active and responsible citizenship, and I want to leave you with them today. They are listen, learn, gather, argue, serve, join, circulate, advocate, and vote. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you in the civic circles.